If I want to hang my hammock way up high in the tree canopy, how do I rig my gear? This tutorial is going to be fast, so pay attention. Now, before you learn how to rig a hammock up high in a big tree canopy, you first have to know how to get up into that tree canopy. I have created one of the best how to tree climb video series for beginners, and I will leave a link below. So if you don't know how to do that, definitely go check that out. Otherwise, let's learn how to rig a hammock up in the tree canopy. In the last episode, I showed you guys how to choose the best kind of hammock for tree camping and what kind of trees you should be looking for when you're ready to go out on your first adventure. Now we're gonna learn how to tie the knots and safely rig all of your gear for a full night's sleep up in the canopy. One of the most important things that I want you guys to learn today is to stay safe. When you're hammocking, you need to get your main tie-in point for your climbing rope as high up into the canopy above your hammock as possible. Imagine for a minute that this purple rope is your hammock anchor and your hammock goes out horizontally, and this is your main climbing rope. If your tie-in point is on the same plane as your hammock and you climb up that rope and then out into your hammock, if your hammock breaks, you will swing down with a lot of momentum and smash into the tree very hard. If, however, you move your main tie-in point as high as you can and you climb up that rope and then you go out into your hammock, if your hammock breaks, your swing and smash into the tree is a lot more gentle. It'll still hurt, but it has a lot less propensity to break bones or potentially kill you. This is exactly how I would hang my hammock up high in the tree canopy, and if you'll notice, there's actually two ridge lines. The first ridge line is made from a climbing rope. That is used as the main anchor points on both ends of your hammock. Now, this serves the purpose to give you something to hang on to or do a pull-up on to help get into the hammock, or if you want to stand in the hammock, it allows you to stand up without falling out because you essentially have 2 points of contact when you're in your hammock. The second ridge line here goes from your prusik on the main ridge line down to the other end of your hammock and the second prusik on the main ridge line. This second ridge line isn't necessary, but I like to have one because it allows me to quickly set up the width of my hammock. Because if you don't have that second ridge line, you might pull your hammock too tight, which makes for a very uncomfortable sleep, or it might be too closed and you'll be sleeping in a U shape, which is also quite uncomfortable. Going back to the main ridge line, we need to find a knot to anchor that ridge line to the trees. This is totally up for debate. It's not a life safety feature because you're of course always going to be tied into your main anchor point via your main climbing line, and you sleep with it. So some people might disagree with the style of knots that I choose to anchor my hammock, but I prefer easily being able to adjust my hammock up in the tree canopy versus safety, since again, I'm always going to be on my main climbing line. My preferred knot is just a standard slip knot. Wrap your rope around the tree, get yourself a little excess, then take the rope and form a circle around the other side and pass a bight around the back. Pull it taut. Now you should have a tail and a loop. Just push the tail in through the loop and pull it tight like so. If you want to easily remove it, pull the tail out of the loop, slip knot, and it's open. If you're short on cash or you just like using the smallest amount of gear as possible, you can actually use the tail end of your climbing rope as your main ridge line for your hammock. It's just sitting on the ground not doing anything anyways, right? If you don't feel safe using a slip knot since they're not rated for climbing, you can always do things like a figure eight. I mean, there's so many options that I couldn't even go over them. The most important thing is that you play with all of your options when you're hanging out on the ground. Test it overnight close to the ground and see which one is your favorite and which one you feel like you want to use when you go for your first trip up into the tree canopy. Once you have your main ridgeline set up, it's time to tie your hitch cords. A prusik or a climb heist are my two favorites. And what this allows you to do is wrap a piece of cord around your ridgeline and adjust it easily, while at the same time creating a very tight anchor point that won't move once you have your hammock set. I'm gonna show you guys how to tie the climb heist. I highly prefer it over the prusik just because it's so simple to tie. Start with a loop of cord and take a bite. Just wrap it. That's all you do. And then you pass one end through the other end. Boom. That's your climb heist. You can pretty it up if you want, but the more wraps you make, the less hard it's going to bite down on the rope and the easier it is for you to adjust. If you want it to bite down the rope, if you're a heavier guy, then use less wraps and it'll bite really tight. Once you have your climb heist tied, take your one end of your hammock, clip it in, do the same for the other end and tighten it down. Now, some people might argue that you need to use a locking carabiner, but since your hammock isn't safety rated, since it's just made from fabric, that means that there's really no part of your system that needs to be safety rated. Your safety comes from being appropriately tied to your climbing line 24/7. As far as hanging a tarp when you're up in the canopy, my suggestion to you is if it's raining, don't go tree camping, because even if you manage to hang a tarp over your hammock, the rain will still trickle down your climbing line, get into your harness, and soak you while you're sleeping. The only solution that I found to this is a portaledge or a single point hammock where the actual anchor point inside of your hammock is climbing rated and behind a waterproof barrier. If you want to set up a tarp in case of an emergency, then I recommend getting a tarp sock or making a tarp sock. You can even make one out of blue poly tarp and some duct tape. Boom, there you go. I hope you guys learned something from this video. If you have a question about something that I didn't talk about, I'm sure I forgot something, leave a comment below and I will try my very best to answer all questions that come my way. Otherwise, like always guys, goodbye and be safe.